evening, fellow Toastmasters friends. This is a true story, one that I wish had not happened, but it did. And because it's a story, I feel like I should be sitting in a chair like I would with one of my children. When I was a young girl, probably 6 or 7 years old, I had a best friend whose name was Jean. And one day, Jean disappeared. Had no idea where she had gone. Now, I would like all of you to close your eyes and imagine that suddenly there was a war between blue-eyed people and brown-eyed people. And some of your relatives were blue-eyed people who lived far, far away where this war was taking place. But because you had blue eyes, the government said that you were to gather everything that you could carry and report to a concentration camp. You could take perhaps 2 suitcases. If you had children, you'd have to count for them. Maybe you had trucks and maybe you had equipment. Possibly you could sell, but you could take nothing else with you. And what I am talking about is a place, for one, called Manzanar. Are any of you aware of what Manzanar is or was? A few of us. I later found out that my friend's last name was Harada, and she was Japanese. And she and her family had been taken to a concentration camp. Manzanar was one of 10 camps on the West Coast. Some were in Wyoming. I have another friend who was incarcerated in Wyoming. And these poor people first were reported to relocation centers, and they were given their shots and their physicals. And then they were taken to other camps. One was Manzanar. Manzanar is in the High Sierras, and it's between Independence and Lone Pine off 395. It is a monument now. You could, on your way to Bishop, on your way to Mammoth, stop and see this museum of Manzanar. These people were put in barracks that were 20 feet wide and 100 feet long, with apartments that were 20 by 20. The only privacy they had were wires strung up to make these 20 by 20 apartments. They had a single light coming down for their light. They had no inside plumbing. They had to stand in line for everything. They stood in line for their meals. They stood in line for the toilets. They stood in line for the laundry. And unfortunately, the toilets and the showers were all communal. There was absolutely no privacy. Although some of the people were very bright, and they made these little screens so that if they were sitting on the toilet, they'd put their screen around. These people of Manzanar and the other camps were really very enterprising. They had their own, first they built the barracks. And as I mentioned, the barracks were just shacks. They were made of tar paper and wood, and that was it. The wind would be so great along the desert in the High Sierras that these people would wake up in the morning covered with dust. and would have to shake everything off and start their day. The climates that they had to put up with in the High Sierra were beastly hot, beastly hot. And then in the wintertime, there was even snow. But they coped. They were, for the most part, very placid people, and they made communities out of these small areas. They would have their baseball teams. They even had Cub Scouts. They had people who, because the food was so bad, it was what the Americans considered like gyrations. They developed their own farms, and even someone, somehow or another, got a hold of pigs and chickens, so finally they had meat. But getting back to the social life, they had high school, and they had high school dances just like everyone else did in the 40s with the bobby socks and I guess it wasn't rock and roll at the time, but whatever the music was. They coped with this terrible situation. That was in December 7th, 1941 when it started. In August of 1945, they decided the war was over and these people could leave the camps. Unfortunately, these people had no place to go because, of course, everything had been taken away from them. They did have jobs, as I mentioned. If you were just unskilled worker, you could earn $8 a day, and the scale went up to professional scale of $19 a day. And some of these people were certainly able to save some money. But again, they were to leave the camps. They were given $25 and said, get out. Some of the people had saved money, and some of the people had places to go. But those that didn't want to leave the camp. After all, that had been their life for 3 years. People had died, people had married, people had had babies. But they did leave. Some of them had to be forced out. But they came back mostly to where they had come from. And some of them became, again, very successful farmers, very successful business people, doctors, dentists, and what have you. I interviewed a friend, presently a friend of mine, who is Shiganaka. I can't say it. Shiganito. Anyway, his property was in San Juan, and now the school that bears his name is on where his farm property was. And as I said, he was incarcerated at 8 years old. And look what you can do if you have to.
Please take a minute to write down Fredi.